You're watching Devil in Divorce. I'm your host, Karen Turk, and I'm here with my co-host, attorney Joe Costello, and we're talking another divorce hot topic. And we're here today with Brian, and Brian is another lifetime alimony payer. Lifetime alimony and guilt. You kind of got the double whammy going on.
Right. You call me a payer, I'm a victim.
A victim. You're a victim.
Yeah.
You don't strike me as the kind of guy who plays victim.
I don't, but I'm stuck in the system that punishes for lifetime a person who decides not to be married anymore. And I was married for 18 years. I've been paying 10 years of permanent alimony with the foreseeable future of continuing to write those checks.
And you're actually manually writing the checks, so you get to relive this every single month.
I am, because I don't do the automatic withdrawal from my bank account. I write those checks every month. I remind myself so I'm never late. But it is painful to write that check every month, to remember that something that I did 10 years ago, I am going to be paying for forever.
Well, Brian, tell us about how the marriage ended as far as the legal aspect of it. Was it something that resulted in a trial, or did you guys resolve your case in a mediation?
No, we didn't go to trial. We did through mediation. And at the time, my attorney recommended that we do a mediation and do a settlement because the cost of going to court would far exceed the benefit. The end outcome would be the same. I was in a marriage for 18 years. The judge would see that or consider it a long-term marriage, and I'd be saddled with permanent alimony anyway. I was the primary earner, and I would be forced under current laws to pay forever.
Do you think that you would have gone to trial if you didn't have some of the feelings and emotions that you had? Like, one of the emotions that you expressed was that you were feeling at that time kind of guilty because you were the one that ended the marriage, and you kind of felt like, this is my restitution that I have to pay or whatever in your head at that time. Do you think that you could have been given better options by going to trial?
I don't. I think the end result would have been the same, and the legal costs amount very quickly, and it didn't really make sense to continue to pay an attorney for something that was going to have the same result if I took another 6 to 12 months to settle it.
Was your divorce contentious before the mediation?
It wasn't contentious. I left my wife willingly, and we were not at odds. We didn't have a real difficult time, but it's an obviously very emotionally charged time, and she felt scorned, and I understand that completely. And when you're sitting at that mediation table, you feel the degree of guilt. And I understand why alimony is important, and I don't disagree with the concept of alimony. The concept of permanent alimony is what I disagree with.
What part of alimony do you agree with? There
should be a period of rehabilitative or get back on your feet type of alimony. Maybe it's a percentage of the marriage. If we have these laws that are being talked about now, where 50% of your time of your marriage would be your obligation for alimony, I think that's fair. But to say that you were married for 18 years and I'm 54 years old, I could be paying for another 30 years, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense in fairness.
How much of the mediation process, or how much understanding did you have about the mediation process going in?
My lawyer he explained pretty much what was going to happen. And our mediation was very quick. We sat in a room for 8 hours and we hashed out all of the details in that time. And I think both of us didn't want to extend the discomfort and the pain and the expense. So we both agreed maybe I didn't get as much as I wanted, she didn't get as much as she wanted, but at the end of the process, I think we both walked away knowing that we did what was best for us.
You said something interesting. You said, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't have gone to trial because you believe like you would have gotten the same result. You tell me you didn't have a contentious divorce. You told me that you resolved your case fairly easily in mediation. So is this more buyer's remorse, or do you believe that you were somehow wronged in the process?
It's not buyer's remorse, Joe. It is a change of circumstance, not a substantial change of circumstance where I think I'm entitled to a reduction because of a change in my life, but our life circumstances have changed.
And her lifestyle's changed.
Yeah, well, our children are now grown up, so I don't feel the obligation that I had before that my children were more needy. My son's 24 years old. He doesn't need to have help anymore. My daughter's in college. She's not 8 years old as she was 11 years ago. So because our situation has changed, and I couldn't have foreseen that 11 years ago or 10 years ago, my feelings changed. I'm thinking, why did I agree to something that would be permanent for something that really shouldn't be permanent? My situation today and her situation today is different than it was 10 years ago. Not enough that a judge would consider it a substantial life change, but I certainly think that we would agree that our lives today are very different.
So is there some sort of level of reform on the table that's going to take that into consideration? Because we've talked a lot about modification, like, this material change in circumstances. Is there something on the table with that, Joe?
Well, alimony has come up before the legislature several times, and anytime there's a real push for reform, it's kind of shot down in the end. There's been pushes for the elimination of permanent alimony. I know that alimony was made a big part of the recent Tax Cuts and Jobs Act by the current president. So when you factor that in, yeah, there's a push for reform, but you also have to take into account that half the population is probably going to disagree with that reform. So you're going to have these razor-thin margins as to whether or not legislation's actually passed. It's interesting, as an attorney, Brian, I can go into court on Monday and argue one side of the alimony obligation, and then go into court on Tuesday and argue the complete opposite side of it, because it's the nature of who I'm representing in the case. If I have the paying party on one end and the receiving party on the other, there's going to be some element of, well, what's fair? And what I hear a lot from people, including yourself, is, well, the system's broken. It's unfair. And it's interesting because the system is designed to balance things out. It's designed to receive some degree of equity or fairness. But what I hear often is the party that's writing the checks always believe that they can't get any real justice in the system.
Well, is she appreciative that you write these checks every month? That's my question. I want to know if it's appreciated.
I think so. She hasn't complained yet.
Well, see, there you go. So that's a little bit of a bright spot, I guess. I mean, it's a better situation than having somebody who really, isn't doing the right thing. You said she is somebody who works and, has raised your kids. So there are some positives in that, I guess.
We don't have an acrimonious relationship. It's really it's very quiet. We don't have arguments. Our children are past the point where we have to worry about children issues.
Right.
So what do we have to talk about? Very little. So it really doesn't.
Well, if you're
lend
late
itself.
with the check, there might be something to talk about.
I don't want to find out. I
don't think you
I
should.
do the right thing.
I wouldn't
do my
recommend
end.
it.
Yeah.
So Brian, what advice, as somebody who's gone through this process, what advice would you give a father or a mother that's going through this process for the first time and is staring down the barrel of the issue of alimony?
The advice is that you really have to abide by what the laws are today. And I think it's really important what the Reform Act is going to do, is going to take the antiquated laws and customs that we've already pretty much accepted and make them more current. Today's rules and regulations don't apply to things that happened in the 1900s. I know that's another century ago. So we need to have them updated so that they are relevant to today's world. The women working in the workforce today is a whole lot different than it was in the 50s and 60s when a lot of these laws were more applicable. But today, we have women that are working just as much as men, earning as much, if not more than men. Why are the laws not up to date with today's situations?
So I have a really good question for you. Do you think if you approached maybe the issue of modifying with her and asked her the question, have you ever asked her if she would not take the lifetime alimony or maybe let you reduce it?
Well, about a year ago, I looked into a modification. I met with an attorney up in Palm Beach County, and she pretty much told me that without having a severe life change, there's no opportunity for a modification.
Do you think she would just be nice and do it?
If I approached my ex-wife about it, I don't think she would say no. I don't think she would reject I think she would reject my offer.
Well, maybe she'll watch this and maybe she'll have a change of heart. Maybe she'll do the modification.
And you never know until you ask.
You never know. We got to ask the question.
Do you want to start that fight, though? Because for 10 years, it's been pretty calm. And to throw that in, it could create issues that you don't want.
Do you know, I am really happy that you have peace, though, and I think that's a bright spot in all of this.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. You're watching Devil in Divorce.